Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second season of Fit Conversations. A lot has happened since season one, and if I tried to articulate everything that has went on, we wouldn't have time for this interview. And today, in the first session of season two, I have two leaders who have touched my life in a wonderful way, and likewise I have touched them. And today we're going to chop it up with them and talk about leadership as we approach this Black History Month and look at leadership in a general sense and look at leadership as it relates to the African American church and the Black community particularly. So I'm going to give each of them an opportunity, because they know their story better than I can tell their story, to share who they are and what they're doing now. Pastor Lynch.
My name is Pastor Carlton Lynch. I pastor Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church in the city of Benton Harbor, Michigan. I'm born and raised right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Grew up, went to school, Irwin Elementary, Portage, middle school, Elmhurst, high school, pastored my first church here in the city, served here. We didn't call it Kayak then, but Come As Y'all Community Church as the evangelism director. So a lot has happened. I'm the father of two young girls, grandfather, baby girl and baby boy. And so I'm just grateful to be here and to share it with you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We're going to come back to that, man, because I like the way you did that.
Yeah.
And to my left, who are you, sir?
I am Assistant Pastor Jack Fitzpatrick here at Come As You Are, presenting right here Fit Conversations. I also grew up here. Wasn't born here, but grew up here most of my life. Went to school here. Got to kayak about 13 years ago, 2010, 2011, and became, through a long process.
8 years. Yeah.
Through eight long years of discipleship and great leadership, realized that I was called, and had the pleasure of being ordained here, found my wife here, got married here. So it's been an awesome journey.
Wow. You know, guys, you both represent an era of this church that brings fun memories to me. For instance, Pastor Lynch, we put the largest tent out in that parking lot in the city of Fort Wayne. I remember when the gentleman that put it out, that tent cost us $20,000 to put on that parking lot. We had 3,000 people under that tent, all the way from Ohio and Israel, and a new breed came. We had Jamal Bryant's first trip to Fort Wayne was in this church. He spoke in this church. Kurt Franklin, during that same time, a Leading While Bleeding, spoke in this church, and a number of other people. We had a partnership with the Grace Brethren Church and the college there. They had professors come in and talk about leadership and leading while bleeding, et cetera. So we have history on this block. Yeah. We have history in this city. And you represent that era for me, not long after we marched from 6005 South Anthony, the little building, to this particular campus here. You became a part and helped us do some tremendous things. Jack, you represent for me in this church not only the now, but the future. You are the next pastor of this church, and people love you and have watched you grow and watch you lean into that position and responsibility. So you represent the legacy of that. So when I'm sitting here on the eve, because you'll be preaching for us tomorrow, of the eve of the 34th year anniversary of this church, I've been here 27 years, and you both have been or played a part of the fabric of some of the most tremendous times that I've shared at this church. And I think within that context, I'd like for us to spend some time maybe revisiting. When you look back on that era, what does it mean to you?
I think that the church, if we had the opportunity to go back to that era, a lot of people will go in reverse.
Okay.
Because the church was stronger, it was more relevant, it reached more people from an organic place.
Okay.
I think now, in this day and time in which we live, we have to do so much to reach.
Okay.
Thinking about that conference, Leading While Bleeding,
Yeah.
that's just what it was.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
we didn't have to say anything, but if you in leadership and you bleeding, come. And this sanctuary was jam-packed to capacity, and you had pastors from all walks of life that showed up. And it wasn't really about, the who's who. Now you got to protect your block like you selling dope. But then people, they partner with you. Think about the late Reverend Mike Nicholson was on that front row
he was.
during that Anthony Pettis. I mean, and at that time, who we see now on a global stage, Pastor Keon Henderson
He
was
actually
right.
presented in that.
Yeah, he presented in that conference. And so I think that if we had the opportunity to go back, and I know we can't go back, but there are some nuggets, some things that we should cling to from the past and bring them into our future. And as Zach continues, I keep saying Zach, but Jack, maybe Zach should have been the pastor. maybe Zach missed his call. Yeah, maybe he's supposed to be there. But as you take it, I mean, I don't think that we should throw everything away from the past. I believe that there's some things that were just so powerful, and your leadership skills, then and even now, I mean, you haven't changed. I think you changed your, the position on how to get it done, but you've always kept your hand on the pulse. And I think that's what's really important. Not so much what happened, but I just think that leadership component, you have to know what's going on, how the times are moving, so that you'll be able to really go forward in the future. But I miss it. Even when I pulled up, I was thinking about all of it. That Mackenzie was 1 year old,
And she and James's niece, was it James's daughter? James' daughter, Naomi. Yeah, my nephew and niece. Yeah, they was in the playpen together. Yeah. Jack, when you've been here for a while, and I've known you for longer than we've been in a mentoring relationship. When you know the history of this church and the things that it has done and leadership in general, how does that impact you from a future perspective as the next pastor, come as you are, Community Church in Fort Wayne, Indiana?
The only word that really comes to mind is hopeful.
Okay.
When I first got here, I came searching for something. And I was looking for that thing to exit from. I've sat under a lot of pastors because my dad has been in ministry my whole life. So I've sat under many pastors, many great preachers, many great teachers. So when I got here, I mean, you've always been a good preacher and a good teacher. But my struggle growing up in the church, and especially being a pastor kid, was finding that person who can mimic what they preached and what they taught. So when I got here, I was looking for a chink in the armor. And not subconsciously, not in a negative sense, just in the sense of saying, okay, this is why I need to exit. So I was looking for a reason to exit. And Sunday after Sunday, day after day, I kept not finding reasons to leave. And it actually became the opposite. I kept finding reasons to stay. And you were the first pastor, not the first man per se, but you were the first pastor who were allowed their life to be, for me, an open book. Most pastors were always hiding something, shuffling things around so you can't see what they did behind closed doors. And you allowed me into that space to, in my own way, interview you. You allowed me to walk this path on on my own terms, and you guided me, and you whenever I got too far, of course, you okay now, but I was looking for that chink in the armor, and you were the first actual pastor that I saw mimicking what they preached. And so for me, it made me hopeful that you can walk this walk and not just talk it. And so for me, it made me hopeful, like knowing that there are men of God who actually are men of God.
Wow, that's humbling. That's humbling. You know, I've always said this about you, Pastor. You know, even before you were pastor, and I said, you and my son are just alike in this regard. That's why you can't keep his name out of your head. You and Zachary are just alike. You all are so gifted that you don't have to show up for practice. And you can still have a good game. I mean, I watch my son say, oh, I don't want to go to practice, and get out there on the court. He dominated.
Yeah.
I watch you do what you do within ministry, and I'm saying, my God, if he just went to practice. if he just went to practice. And what I want you to share, you know, because I don't want to get away from this. I feel this unction. How long have you been in Ben Harbor?
6 years.
6 years now. And let's talk about some of the things that you've accomplished there.
Well, I mean, we'll have to talk about what I went into.
Okay.
A very old historic church, a seasoned church though, very strong. It really moved me my first time going because it was a lot of people in Sunday school. And I was like, wow, you know, this kind of reminded me of St. John Baptist Church, 2421 South Anna Street. You know, they was in Sunday school, but it was a very hurt church because they just lost their pastor after 34 years.
So the pastor you followed died and have been there 34 years.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was a certain group that wanted me so bad that they would have done anything to make sure that I was the pastor. Good, bad. I mean, Jack, you from the old school Baptist church, is a meeting after the meeting. So we gonna get it done. So if it don't go this way, we're gonna do it this way. But the blessing is that I won the vote, and I became the pastor, and within 2 weeks I was there. Okay. And so going in, I really honestly didn't know what I was doing because I pastored a historic church, Providence. Then I started New Beginnings Church. I pastored Zion Bethel Church. But I went in to a church, Jack, the only difference is it's going on 100 years. And you know, tomorrow we celebrate here 34 years. But just out of 34 years, the church has accomplished so much. So I'm going into a church at that time, 93, 94 years, whatever, but they've accomplished so much. So I'm a kid to them. You know, so all of my ideas, they like, we've done that before. You know, and so I couldn't go in there and reinvent the wheel. So I just decided, in the words of Jamal Bryant, to put some rims with spinners on it.
Yes, sir.
So everything that I've done was always, you know, different, you know, uncut, and in doing that, if I can go back again and try it and do it all over again, I would be more patient with the people. I would also try to learn what has been first, because it's hard to change a family if you don't know their last name. You know, and I didn't really know, you know, that they were hurt while I'm saying, let's go door to door. I'm coming up with First 5 revival, you know, the first 5 nights of the year, and I forgot that they were grieving. You know, and so it's almost like dating someone that you know had the potential, but you didn't ask were they beat in the last relationship. So I think that in my situation, I was blessed, but the only thing is that I wasn't given a handbook. So in ministry, I'm learning that the definition I learned here at this church, that the definition of ministry is to meet the needs of people. And I think that there has to be conversation in order to meet needs. So I'm looking at the whole overall picture of the church, but I'm forgetting that the church is made up of people, of individuals. And that's what the church is a body of baptized believers. And so it's been good, but it's been rough at the same time. God always will allow your good to overshadow at times, but sometimes people will overshadow the good with the bad. I just told my team coming here, I said, man, I'm really ticked off today. They said, why is that? I said, just this past week, 3 young men went into a house and shot and killed a man. And 2 of the young men turned themselves in, but the third one, mother called me, reached out, and said, we need your help to get him to turn himself in before the police find him and kill him. So I got all kind of stuff going on, but by God's grace and his leading, we done just that. He surrendered at our church this past week. And I'm ticked off, Jack, because nobody posted it.
Wow.
Nobody will post that you've been at this church all day. You moving ladders, you making sure the lighting is together, you running around, like nobody's gonna post that. And so I'm learning in ministry how to do ministry and post it in my own mind and remember it myself. Because we're in a generation now that people will celebrate your failure, but they'll drive past all of your success.
That's a powerful statement right there in and of itself, man. I think that, I don't think though it is different. I think the access by which the masses get it is different. So it seems like it's larger or more of an emphasis on the negative than the positive. I think there's always been an emphasis on the more emphasis on the negative than the positive. I don't care how many home runs you hit.
Oh, yeah.
You know, people always remember that Reggie Jackson struck out. You know, so I just think that the reality of it is that it gets to the social media so quickly now versus in times gone by. You know, so you've had a lot of success, and you came into a church which is celebrating 100 years here
In November.
in November.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
100 years.
yeah.
And I've had a chance to be there on 2 different occasions.
Yeah.
And I know that everybody that I've talked to there when I did leadership stuff there talked about the church in terms of it being family and how much it meant to them as a family. Some go back as far as 30 years, 35 years, 40 years.
There's some been there 70 years.
70 years.
Yeah.
You know, that they grew up in the church. That in of itself is historic.
Yeah, and that's the part I think that I missed coming in, because Fort Wayne is not really family-oriented churches.
It's very transit.
You know, Sister Caldwell, that's a member here now, taught me in Sunday school when I was 3 years old. I don't know what side of town she lives on. Me and her son, Corey, were just like you and some other of your friends. We grew up in church. I don't know what school he went to. I only seen him at church. In Benton Harbor, at our church, these people know each other. They know they live on Napier. They know, you know, where they work. And so I'm coming into a church from Fort Wayne. When I left the city, it was the top news on News 15 that Carlton. So when I get to them, they humbled me like we don't care nothing about that. I mean, Jack, you got to see it. See, I'm on the news. Pastor Carlton Lynch is leaving Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
So I'm going there saying, hey, honor me. I'm on the headlines. No, brother, no, they walking past, glad to have you. So I think that in ministry, I think that family-oriented church is what is really gonna bring relevance back to our churches. These people really have a relationship outside of church.
Yeah, we talked about that in a recent workshop that we did on leadership and church culture, and we talked about how important it is for that connection. If there is anything that COVID taught us, it taught us, number one, that there is a longing for connection. But the longing for connection almost has a sense of, I want to be connected as long as it profits me. When it no longer profits me, I could kick you to the curb. So it's a very shallow relationship of longing and need connection. So I think coming back on the post side of COVID, we got to make sure that we are deepening those relationships. And et cetera. So here's what I want to do. I want to transition into this thought here, guys. What do you think, given your experience, Jack, your experience, and you humbling me by saying I always have my pulse on what's next, and what do you think is next for the African American church in general?
Wow. Let me tell you this, I'll answer it this way. When COVID first hit, I called Dr. Craig Oliver and started asking him questions. Hey man, what should I do? How should I? And he said, hey man, I'm in this thing trying to figure it out. You keep calling me. And so I think the answer to that is almost not a fair question.
Okay.
Because I don't think that people are connected to what we know as church anymore. There's too many options.
Okay.
And
elaborate on that.
I think people now are not looking for something where they can become a member.
Okay.
They want to be a part of a movement.
Wow.
So when I say that they're trying to be a part of a movement, and especially millennials, because my mother is not leaving her church. So we're trying to reach really the hard to reach. If nothing is going on at a Pacific church, there's no interest for them to attach themselves. So I think that us just giving away food stamps, man, giving away a lot of money right now, brother. They don't need your chicken and fries.
Okay.
Right now we're in the midst of another killing in Memphis. As you know, the video just went out. Now everyone is engaged on social media. Everybody is posting.
Wow.
So now we have to figure out how to get our hands on that story to be able to draw them into a conversation that's relevant at the time. I think now, and that's what I love about the FIT conversations, because the conversation may be different this time next month.
Yeah.
I think it's based on what's going on in the country or in community, at the time. More people have gotten involved in politics more through the pandemic than they ever have. Young people. Yeah. You see people, starting to become a part of the parties and so forth. So I believe that if we're going to do this, trying to get a massive crowd to come to our churches now on a Sunday morning, I mean, that's cool if you can push it, but we're going to have to figure out a way to do church another way.
Okay. Okay, Jack, what do you say about that from your generational perspective? And tell us again how old you are.
33.
Okay. So, and
Correct.
you
I'll
are,
be 33 in a week.
I'm 43.
okay, so I'm 65.
You know, I want to ask you a question. Because you're 65, I'm 43. I never met my dad. Are you my dad? I've been looking for him for 43 years.
That boy is crazy. You got to get Jamal out of your ear.
Jamal told me that, hey, Lynch, Jamal said this in this same church. The second time he came, he said, hey, Lynch, man, I got to tell you something. And so I was like, man, Jamal want to tell me something. That was big for me then, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, couldn't wait till we left up out of here. We got in the car, I said, what you want to tell me? He said, oh, yeah. I think Peyton your dad. He said, don't fight it, just get that child support, and we won't tell nobody.
Oh, that guy is crazy. But from your perspective.
Yeah. You challenged me maybe 6 months ago, maybe.
Depends on what it's talking about.
You challenged me maybe 6 months ago. You said you have to start now trying to figure out how you're going to reach your generation. You said you can't. You told me you can't wait till you're pastor. And I genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that we have to go back to sound doctrine. When I talk to believers, especially my age, that are in church, invested in church, and many of them even grew up in church and still go to church. But those that even have joined, most of them don't know doctrine. Most of them don't know the doctrine of God. Most of them don't know the doctrine of the Son. Most of them don't know the doctrine of the Holy Spirit, the doctrine of the Trinity as a whole. Most of them don't know the doctrine of salvation, the doctrine of heaven, hell, all of these things, the doctrine of faith and grace, and all of these different doctrines that are integral principles to the faith and to the gospel. And we keep saying that church is changing, and church is changing, but what's not changing is the gospel. And we don't have young Christians who actually know the gospel. We don't have young believers that actually know the word. So they come and they get a word, and it sounds good, but they don't have anything to go home with. Okay. They don't have anything that they're learning on their own. They don't have any what's the right way? What's the right word? They don't have any edible food. So they just take these sound bites that they get Sunday morning, but they don't know the core principles behind what they got Sunday morning. Wow. So you can teach me all about this specific text, but I don't even know who God truly is. So we're preaching passages without even knowing who the passage is about. So I think one of the ways, there are many different avenues, but I think one of the core ways is that we have to figure out a way to teach doctrine to the younger generation.
Dr. Smith, who wrote the book, Robert Smith, Doctrine That Dances, says that it isn't the doctrine is boring, it's the teacher, presenter is boring. Yeah. I agree, because what I observe from a 65-year-old perspective, and not just younger leaders, pastors, but younger folks in church in general, is they do not know what they do not know.
And they're not interested.
That's the key right there. And many of them are not interested. Why aren't they interested? Because their gift is so powerful, especially in the pulpit, they don't feel like they have to know anything else but use their gift. And all of us know, Scripture says, the gift goes without repentance. So a person can use the gift and operate in the gift and still not have an anointing on his or her life, and go out and make stupid decisions and bring a black eye to the church as a whole, because they didn't slow down long enough to get what they needed to be successful every stage of their life. Here's what I'm thankful for. And I said this in the workshop that I did recently. I'm thankful for the old man who set me down on a porch in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, after leading me to Christ, and he literally crossed the tracks and sat there on the porch and discipled me for 3 years. I'm so thankful that I had nothing, that I was so broken, so desperate that I couldn't present to him any fight. I had no more fight in me. And so as a result of that, I emotionally, psychologically, intellectually hung on every word that he was teaching me from that word. So when I finally got here and started school, I had a firm foundation. And during the course of my life as pastor and ministry in general, I have said to people, I am here for you now because somebody was there for me then. And they made sure I had a firm foundation, firm hold on the essentials of the faith. And I think that that's one of the things that is missing in a society that church is more like club life. Yeah. It's hot over there. Yeah. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah. I think that's what has kept you and the people. What I love about Come As You Are is this. Pastor Brooks, Corey Brooks out of Chicago, he preaches a message entitled When Jesus Comes In. And he talks about when the Lord said, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but you turned into a den of thieves. He says, the very little thing that we see in church is prayer. But the Lord says, my house shall be called prayer. He says, why is it more singing than praying? Why is it more, graphics than prayer? He said, it's like going to a soul food restaurant asking for Chinese food. He said, you don't go to, a Mexican restaurant, Jack, and ask for greens. So I think, with this same conversation on doctrine, one, we do understand that as he was talking about it, and you brought up, that word doctrine, which means just right biblical teaching, is what people are not interested in. People are more after prophecy. They have to close cars and cribs. How can I get it now? But I think what has stabilized Come As You Are is that I've seen this church with no music. I've seen this church with no dancers and no flags, and just a man with a Bible walking around with a lapel mic teaching. They called me a couple of days ago and said, you come into our church, do you want a lapel mic or a handheld? I said, man, I'm a Baptist preacher. Give me a microphone, the whole, So I think that if you just stay right there and be comfortable that everybody is not running after sound teaching, and be okay with it. Now we got to figure out what's the next wave that's hitting the churches so that we can draw people. When Jesus says, if you lift me up, meaning his word, he says, I'll do the drawing. So in your transition, you have to just be comfortable that if you want them to have something to take home, something on the inside, meaning you want them to have some leftovers by Tuesday so they can go back and cling to that word on Sunday, be comfortable with not being the hottest thing in town.
Wow. That's major emotionally, psychologically, from an ego perspective, because everybody wants to go where somebody knows their name, as the cheer song said. Okay, so let's just see if we can boil this down for our audience, and we're gonna say this is first part of it. We're gonna do this in two parts. So this is the first part, because I think we still got some things to unpack here. So I'm gonna thank you all for being a part of our conversation today, Fit Conversation. If you've been with us for a while, you know that Fit Conversation stands for Fearless, Intentional, and Transformational Conversation. So every conversation we have on this stage has at the heart of it the idea of creating this fearless disposition and this sense of intentionality when it comes to that, and with the ultimate goal that we will be transformational. And you don't get that without honest conversation. You don't get that without being true to who you are, where you've been, where you are, and where you believe that God is going. So I am thankful today that I've had these two young leaders in our presence in this conversation. We're gonna close it for now. You know where the website is. You know how to, if you want further information, how to go there and get it. But we're gonna come back with part 2 of this conversation and get more defined, if you would, next week, and some things that we believe are challenges for this new generation of leaders in general, but in the African American church experience particularly. I'm Anthony Payton, pastor, teacher of Come As You Are Community Church, and you have been watching Fit Conversation. Thank you.